Welcome to episode number 122 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host, Jason Sayeda, and tonight we'll be doing our big NFL preview show. It's always fun. So we'll get into that in a second. But as always, tonight's episode is sponsored by Giovanina's Pizza. You've tried the rest, now try the best, Giovanina's. So unfortunately, Tommy cannot join us tonight. He's not feeling well, but I do have his final four. So I have his conference championship games, his Super Bowl matchup, and his winner. Um, so I will let you guys know that at some point. But first, let's go through our panel. We're joined tonight, as always, by Jimmy the Chalk. Chalky, what's going on?
Jason, what's going on?
Too much. And back this week is Chris Meeker. What's up, Meeker?
What's up, guys? It's almost football season. Getting excited. Got some college games this weekend, so kicking it off.
Yeah. Not as big of a college guy as you are, but yeah, it's getting close. But all right, let's get into it. So what I think we'll do with this show is we're gonna start with the Eagles. We'll just give our brief opinion on what we think is of their upcoming season. Maybe just give our thoughts on whether or not they make it over their projected win total or under. And after we do that, we will get to the divisions, give our thoughts on the order of finish in each division, give out our playoff teams, and then our championship games and our Super Bowl and Super Bowl winner. And then we'll get to some prop bets at the end. Um, so let's get started. We'll talk Eagles first, like I said. So Eagles ended last year with a disappointing wild card round loss to Tampa Bay. In the offseason, they had a bunch of changes. They changed their coordinator. So Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator. Vic Fangio is the defensive coordinator. They added Saquon Barkley, Bryce Huff, their first round pick, Quinion Mitchell. Looks like he's going to be their starter in the secondary. But they did lose Kelsey and Cox to retirement. So I'll throw to Jimmy first. Chalky, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the season?
Uh, I think their team that hit that ceiling is, possible Super Bowl appearance, maybe even winning. Question is, what do you think their floor is? And I think I was reading yesterday, one of the books has their odds of making the Super Bowl as likely as them like winning less than 7 games, which is kind of crazy. But um, we'll get into who makes what. I mean, I think they're barring catastrophic injuries, they're a playoff team. But the question becomes, you lost your veteran leadership on both sides of the ball with Kelsey and Cox. You still have Graham and some of the other guys, so that'll be that they'll still have some veterans on defense. But you know, is that are these other guys going to have the energy without the veterans, the potential Hall of Famers like lined up next to them? And look, Eagles are still going to have a really good offensive line. I'd say they're at the very least going to be a top 5 offensive line, but they're not going to be the best offensive line. And there's now a gap between them and maybe the top 2 or 3 offensive line. Where they really started to fall apart last year was when the defense wasn't getting stops, and they made some changes there. They got rid of Reddick, they brought in Huff, drafted some guys. It's I it's gonna be hard for the secondary to play worse, but you got a lot of youth there, and you brought CJ, Johnson back. Um, so I think they're a definite playoff team. I think they're a legit contender, but I'm not quite there on you know last year we were all it's the 49ers or the Eagles that are going to win the NFC. I'm certainly not there this year. The coordinators are an upgrade, but Hurts usually doesn't do as great in the first year of a coordinator, and he's had constant change. So hopefully more will be, put him in some better situations. But it's gonna be wait and see. So I'll stop there so Meeker can get some thoughts in. But I'm excited, but not the level of optimism maybe even of last year.
All right. So before we move on, 10.5 is there over and under in wins. What do you have?
I I think I have him at about 11, so I would go over.
Okay. All right, Meeker, what do you got?
All right. So, I made a lot of notes on some things I want to kind of bounce off you guys, and we can go a little back and forth with some of these points. Some of which Chalky had talked about, but I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail. So I kind of divided it into offense and defense and what I'm looking for versus not X's and O's, but just kind of what I'm looking for now that they've made some transitions with their coordinators and so forth. So I'll start with the offense, and I think the offense, in my opinion, they have the most offense. They have the most talent that I think that the team has ever had. So I think there's no excuses from a roster construction point of view. However, I'm interested in seeing the transition of the leadership and the toughness with the loss of Kelsey. And, he called the coverages. He was a huge part of everything that they did that made the offense go. So we'll see how much they miss him. But I still think, to Chalky's point, the offensive line is among the league's best as long as Lane Thomas is healthy, right? Because I think he's a big part of that. And I don't discount how much Saquon adds to this offense. I know that in other shows that we've talked about running backs, we kind of poo poo running backs, but you know, there's a stat that I heard on the radio the other day where Swift's after contact yards were amongst the league's worst amongst backs that had over, I think, 150 or 200 carries, where Saquon was actually top five. So his playmaking ability is really limited with the Giants, along with all his injuries. So it'll be very interesting to see what type of dynamic he brings to the team, both as a pass catcher and a running back. So I want to stop there for a second before I get into Jalen Hurts. Do you think that Saquon brings that what the Eagles have been missing, let's just say, for the last few years at the running back position, and he's going to be an important part of this offense?
Well, you said they have the most offensive talent they've ever had. I think you mean what's the name players, skill players, right?
Skill
Yeah,
players.
because with Kelsey off the team, who's technically offense, he's
Yeah.
a Hall of Famer. So, um, skill player wise, I would agree. As far as total offense, I would kind of disagree because of the loss of Kelsey. But I think Barkley will help for sure. He's one of the points I'm gonna bring up when I talk. But he's got to stay on the field. Got to get
Right.
hurt a lot, right? And these guys that get hurt a lot tend to continue to get hurt a lot. So if he stays on the field and is healthy, he will definitely add to the team because he could catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a good back. I think Kellen Moore will utilize him, um, you know, in all facets of the game. Um, but again, it just depends on his health.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to Hertz here for a second. So, Hertz plays with his, as Chalky mentioned, his third offensive coordinator in 3 years. But the biggest differences I saw last year, and we talked about it a lot during the year with the offense, is it seemed like when the play design didn't materialize, he held on to the ball, didn't take off and run like he was effectively doing in 2022. And they didn't run hots when the defense had coverage, right? So with Kellen Moore and with the addition of Barkley, I think the offense will have more options, run more motion, which they didn't do a lot of, and keep defenses guessing. But in his complex offense, the quarterback needs to make quick reads and it'll instill hot routes into the offense that weren't really part of 2023's offense. So many say he doesn't run enough and his designs for running plays are a little predictable. Hence the Chargers running on first down pretty much, every first down last year. And his offensive schemes have more trouble when a defense rushes four and gets pressure. So the offensive line's protection packages will be vitally important in the success of his offense. And you lose a guy like Kelsey. But to me, with the skill positions that the Eagles possess, I can see the offense looking more like Dallas teams, more the Dallas teams that more coached more like than the Charger teams from last year. And I'll be looking for it to look more like the player he was from 2022 than last year when everything in the second half of the season looked inept. Sirianni has claimed a bit of a hands-off kind of approach this year with both offensive defense. So it's more his offense to run. So we'll see if he's a big difference maker. What do you think about Hurts for the year? Chalky?
I think you'll get closer to 22 than 23, whether you're, he wasn't perfect in 22, but it seemed like there's very little he could do wrong. And part of that was, he was willing to use his legs when necessary. And we talked about it last year, but there was a word that he was a little banged up coming out of camp, and then he just didn't look like the same type of player for most of the year. And I think they sort of alluded that in the offseason about, he wasn't ever really 100% healthy. But um, I think, Moore's claim to fame is he gets guys open. So when you got two of the arguably top 10, top 15 receivers in the league, the Dotson trade was a good trade for, a guy that's going to be a three. He's not, if he gives you those numbers as a three, I'll be thrilled. He's not going to see the ball that much, but he's a legit weapon. And then when you got Barkley and Goddard, you got a lot of weapons to play with and get guys open. The two things that are concern me is you know, is the line going to hold up? And, I think the line is going to win a battle against a four-man rush most days, even without Kelsey. But when you're talking about calling out blitzes or checking down or making calls, I mean, like Jason said, Kelsey did all that. So how is that going to be handled now? Can Hurts do it? I'm not going to say he can't, but he hasn't had to because Kelsey's been there every game. And having the center make those calls is not the ideal situation. You want the quarterback to be able to do that. So I don't know how much of that decision was just like, look, Kelsey was already borderline Hall of Famer when Hurts got here. We're just going to let him do that. Or it was Hurts not showing the ability in practice or whatever to be able to make those kind of reads. And so it just fell on Kelsey. So I mean, those two things, the line giving Hurts some protection without, you know, when the other team isn't bringing an extra guy, and picking up those, you can rush four, but if you confuse the quarterback and he thinks the wrong guy is rushing and doesn't make a read or something, then that's going to be problematic too. So those are going to be the two things I think that will decide what his stats, what his numbers look like at the end of the year. Because if he gets protection, I'm confident Moore will get these guys open and he'll have a lot easier time like he did in 22 with his second year under Steichen.
So more molds his offense around like the players he has. So like he didn't run the ball a lot last year because Chargers. I think Eckler got hurt earlier in the year, right? So they really didn't have backs to run the ball. So he threw the ball more there. I think the offense will look a lot more like Dallas's offense a couple years ago. I'm not as convinced as you guys are on Jalen Hurts, right? You could blame their coordinator, the loss of Steichen last year. But in the first half of the year, Hurts was playing well. He was getting rid of the ball. He was, doing what he had to do. The second half of the year, he started holding on to the ball, and I think his throwing time was like close to 3 seconds or something. I read in the second half of the year, which is outrageously too long to hold on to the ball.
Well,
I
yep.
I am not convinced. With and like you guys mentioned, with Kelsey's gone now. Hurts has got to be calling the schemes at the line and stuff. I don't know about this guy. I'm not convinced that Jalen Hurts is gonna have a good year this year. I'm not as convinced as you guys are that he's gonna bounce back. Um, we will see. Um, but I think Moore will utilize Barkley a lot, right? I think he's gonna kind of make him like the feature guy in the offense.
All right. So if we want to talk a little bit about defense, so last year, every level of the defense, especially in the second half of the season, had issues. So going our Fletcher Cox, Son Reddick, Morrow, Byard, and in our Bryce Huff, Zach Bond, who I know a little bit about. He was a Saint for a pretty long time. And rookies Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, while Bradbury and Vontae Maddox become depth pieces, which I heard today they're moving Bradbury now to safety. Did you guys hear that? That
He's
he's
moving
gonna
to the
be
Well, he's not
IR.
moving anywhere for the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, what happened?
He,
I
he
didn't hear this.
yeah,
Sorry.
he had a leg injury Wednesday in practice, so he's probably going on the IR if he hasn't already.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, is he out for a while? I mean, is it major
Up to
injury?
Half
up
the
to
season.
8 weeks after season, probably.
Okay. Well, they were going to move him to safety, but I guess that doesn't matter now. But all reports are Quenya Mitchell looks like the real deal, and he'll likely play nickel with DeJean when he's ready. And CJ to every down safety moves to an every down safety. So I'm interested in seeing all the different secondary personnels they tried out there with the depth they now have, which they didn't really have a whole lot of depth last year. And we got Ringo too, right? And Isaiah Rogers opposite Slay to go along with the rookies. So they addressed the need they had for a lot of options in the secondary. Um, I think the most important player on the defense this year is actually Jordan Davis. And will he take the next step? Will he stay healthy? You know, he's the most important part of defense's success this year. And will Bryce Huff play that Hassan Reddick kind of role and, get some sacks off the edge? Because the Eagles need to put pressure on the quarterback, which is what they were not doing in the second half of last year. I'll kind of stop there and let you guys comment on some of these things. How about the secondary depth? Do you believe that Huff will replace Reddick when it comes to the pressure?
So Vic Fangio runs a 3-4, right? I am not. I'll get to the secondary in a second. I'm not convinced their front seven is good enough. Specifically their pass rushers. I think Jalen Carter probably takes a step up and becomes the star that he looked like he was going to be in the first handful of games last year until he just totally fell off a cliff. Um, they need him to step up and be what they think he could be. Um, I just don't think, and Jordan Davis, I don't know about him. He just seems to be a guy who's not in shape. I don't know if he's going to be in shape this year or not, but a guy who just tires. He totally tired in the second half of last year and getting pushed all around, even though he's 360 pounds or whatever he is.
Well, in a 3-4, I mean, he's going to be extremely important in stopping the run, and
Absolutely.
it's why I think he's the most important piece of the defense.
Well,
Which
I think Carter
Carter,
is
well,
a better
it
player.
goes without saying, of course, but I
Well,
mean,
then he would be the most important piece. But his secondary, I think they definitely improved, and they have a stronger secondary, especially at the corners. Now, Gardner Johnson is definitely going to help them at safety. Uh, are they planning on starting Blankenship? Do you guys know? Is he like the starter at the other
he's
safety?
harder in their depth chart.
I don't like
Doesn't mean
Blankenship.
he's gonna play every down,
To
but
me, he's not a starter in this league. So if that is the case, they're Fangio Fangio's defense relies on safeties a lot to come up and stop the run.
right.
Um, I don't know about that. I'm not a big Blankenship fan, but I do think that they improved their corners for sure. Obviously the first round pick's going to help Mitchell, and then Rogers coming back from his suspension, pretty good player. So that solidifies their corners. All in all, I just don't think their defense is good enough, and specifically their front seven and their pass rushers. I do like Huff, but I think their other pass rushers are lacking.
Chalky.
It goes without saying, but I'll say it, Jalen Carter is the most important player
Yeah,
on the defense for me because, the pass rush fell apart last year, and that was, part of the reason what the cornerbacks were getting beat, but was, the biggest difference between last year and the year before was the pass rush wasn't, they had a historically good pass rush the previous season in terms of sack numbers and pressures and all that. They didn't come close to replicating that, and a second here or there where an extra second or two where guys are getting stuck in coverage, even the best defenses are going to get beat sometimes, best cornerbacks. So you can't cover forever. And pass rush wasn't getting home, and therefore their linebackers and safeties were getting toasted. Um, so to me, it's Carter, because if Carter lives up to the potential that he had as the number one pick before some of his issues came in, then he makes Jordan Davis, Huff, Brandon Graham when he's in, uh, all those guys. They are, if you have to double team him, then you're getting one-on-one matchups with everybody else. So that's really going to help And what the biggest defensive piece they missed last year, at least on the line, was Hargrave. Hargrave had
Yeah.
12 sacks, whatever, and you know, without Davis did not replace that. So I think if Carter can step into that and step in above that, even, then you're going to make everything a lot better. Now, the linebackers, I can't see the linebackers being worse, but I mean, again, you got a guy in White who was a really good player, then like a really bad player. So is he going to be, you know, is he going to be what's his name, the guy that went to the Bears, after TJ Edwards, or is he going to be the guy who's or is he going to be Leonard last year that was had nothing left? So uh, I'm still a
They, of
N'Kobe Dean fan. I'd like to see him stay healthy. He hasn't been able to stay healthy.
course you are.
But I mean, as far as the safe and the defensive backfield, Mitchell he's a guy that wants the tough assignments. He is not afraid of going against the best players. So if he's got CeeDee Lamb lined up against him, or some of these guys that they're going to see throughout the course of the year, he doesn't shy away from that, which I kind of like. Johnson brings a little bit of swagger and attitude back, and he's a ball hawk. And they didn't have that in the defensive backfield last year. They missed those kind of turnovers, and he might gamble a little bit, but he had some pretty big turnovers that when the year he played here. So I think they'll be fine as long as the pass rush isn't as bad as it was last year. But there's no guarantee that it won't be. I think it hinges on Carter, and um, again, can Vic Fangio run the Vic Fangio defense? We've been trying to do it here for years without him. So we'll see if he can actually run the defense that's named after him.
Yeah, you brought up the linebackers, and in his defense, the linebackers have to be strong in coverage because he's one of those guys that he's trying to limit the big play. And I do have concern, just like I would have concern any year of an Eagles defense about linebackers. And I don't know that's obviously the weakest part of the levels of the defense. So that would be one of my concerns too. But he's an experienced defensive coordinator. It's an upgrade over Sean Desai. So I wonder how long it'll take for the defense to materialize. But um, you know, should be better than it was last year, not only from a talent point of view, but also defensive coordinator point of view.
All right, let's get your win loss thoughts. 10.5 is their over under. So what do you got?
I'm with Chalky. I think they're 11-win team. Obviously, we're going to go through our divisions and we're going to talk about where I see them. And I think I think, with the roster that's constructed and the talent that they have, we're talking about an organization that doesn't have a whole lot of patience. So if this doesn't work out, I'm looking at Sirianni to be really on the hot seat this year, probably more than any coach in the NFL. And if they don't get at least to like a second round of a playoff, I don't see him. I don't see him being the coach next year.
Well, the thing is that they change. There's no more coordinator excuses now. You got Kellen
Right.
Moore, who's probably waiting in the wings to be the coach, and then you have Fangio, who's probably just uh, you know, uh, content with riding out being a defensive coordinator for the rest of his career. So, yeah, I mean, if they struggle, Sirianni's certainly going to be on the hot seat. Um, all right, I'll just give my thought, very quick thought. I think under. I think they'll be 10-7. But I don't think they'll get over the win loss line. So, all right, so we spent a good 20 minutes on the Eagles. Let's now get into the divisions. And then we'll each take, we'll take turns starting out with going through the teams and the order of finish in each division. And I will start with Chalky on the NFC East. Go.
NFC East for me, it's going to be Eagles, Dallas, Washington, Giants. Eagles have a I don't say slight, but they have an easier schedule at the second place schedule than Dallas will have. Nobody's won the division 2 years in a row, whatever. Okay, that's great. But Dallas certainly has a lot of question marks too. You got a quarterback in the last year of his contract as we speak. You have a coach in the last year of his contract. So these guys are playing for their jobs, but that almost, I mean, not necessarily Dak, but certainly McCarthy. That just never seems to work out when it's like, well, we'll do one in year and see, or we'll do 1 year and see. So I think there's too much talent not to be a playoff team, probably, but I don't think they're going to win the division. So Eagles, Dallas. I mean, Washington. Daniel Jones is Daniel Jones. So I can't put the Giants out of the basement. So
All right, Meeker.
Yeah, I have the Eagles winning the division. I have the Cowboys second, the Giants third, and Commanders last. The Cowboys situation, I think, one thing that might happen during this year is that whether Dak realizes it or whether Jerry Jones realizes it, they get together and they end up signing some sort of contract for him before the end of the season. I hear he might want to test free agency. Maybe he's done with just being on this team, but I feel like what option do the Cowboys have? They really want to let him walk and try and draft a quarterback with the talent that they have, or try and get a free agent quarterback that's never really turns out very well in this league. So yeah, the Giants, they're going to suffer another year with a subpar quarterback. They made that big mistake, and the Commanders are kind of in transition with a new coach and a new quarterback, so they'll finish last.
All right, so I'll go. I agree with you guys. I think the Eagles will win the division. I think Dallas did absolutely nothing in the offseason. Really, they didn't add anybody of consequence. They added Ezekiel Elliott back as their running back, um, and not too much else.
Dalvin
Um,
Cook.
Dalvin Cook is there too.
But yeah, I think he just signed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too enthused with those 2
Yeah,
names.
don't let that change your mind.
Maybe 6, 7 years ago, that would've been okay, but, um, I think the Commanders will finish 3rd. I hear a lot about their quarterback. I think he's gonna run around a lot. I think he's gonna put up some stats. I think Dan Quinn is gonna help them. They did spend some money on defense. They brought a lot of free agents in. It could be a surprise team, depending on, what Daniels does at quarterback, but, I think they'll be improved, a lot better than last year. And the Giants are just atrocious. They are an absolute mess. Daniel Jones is terrible. They signed him to a bad contract. They're in bad shape. They along with another team we'll get to in the AFC, maybe the 2 worst teams in football. So, all right, so we're pretty similar, on the NFC East. So let's go to the South, and we'll start with Meeker, and you can give us your order.
Yeah, I mean, I hear all the Falcon love, with obviously signing Kirk Cousins and some of the free agents they picked up in the offseason, but I'm still going with the Bucks as the winner in the South. I think Mayfield carries his second half success into 2024. And I like the consistency on the roster, especially on both sides of their line and the experience. So I think it's a bad division. So I don't think that any of these teams will make any noise in the playoffs, but I'm going to pick the Bucks to win the division. The Falcons will finish second. And in my opinion, the mistake of not taking a defensive difference maker in the first round of the draft was the biggest reason because their defense was not good and is still not good. And the Saints, look, their offensive line's a mess. Their defensive line and their secondary showing age and not so gracefully. Everyone wants Carr's head in New Orleans and Allen as well, and they're going to struggle to win 7 games, and they're not going to make the playoffs. They'll be a third place team. And the Panthers, all you look for there is for Bryce Young to have a better season than he had last year, but they're going to last place team in the NFC South.
All right, I'll go. I think this is just a awful division, worst division of football. The Falcons are gonna win by default. They're not bad, right? They have the easiest schedule in the league. They have a massive quarterback upgrade with Cousins over Ritter. Um, they by default they're going to win the division because I couldn't tell you another team in this division that even has a chance to win it. Tampa Bay's roster stinks, Meeker. Their coach stinks, Meeker. They're bad. They're a bad team. Your
As they
Saints
were last won the division.
your
They're the same
Saints
team. Really
are
changed
bad.
anything.
Your Saints have a bad coach. Your Saints have a
I'm
bad
not denying.
roster, not a good roster. They're bad. Carolina, listen, if I had to make a bet, like a crazy bet, maybe Canales comes in and turns Bryce Young around, right? And maybe he
Won't
looks
happen.
like a competent quarterback. I don't know. I doubt it. I don't think he's good. But when you have a division this bad, there may be value on putting a bet on the Panthers to make noise in the division. I again, I don't see it. I don't I think the rest of the roster is not even that good. But you got a new coach at least. So um my order will be Atlanta. I will say where do I have my order? I don't even know. Um
Tampa.
I mean by default I do have the Bucks second. I don't really believe it. I have the Saints third and I have the Panthers fourth. But again, I will say anything could happen in that division, so it might be worth throwing something on the Panthers. Chalky.
I'm the same order as you, but and this is not an original idea. I heard it on VSiN, but I'll agree with it. If I'm making a bet, I'm not betting the Falcons at -130. I would bet the Bucks at +320. I don't think the Falcons are 4 times as likely as Tampa to win the division. I think you're making a bet, the value's there. Falcons are -130. Cousins is older, he's coming off an Achilles. He's gonna be an upgrade if he's healthy, and then but how much they love him when they wasted, I don't say wasted, but you could have gotten an immediate player to help you this year, and you went and drafted a quarterback in the top 10. Blew my mind. So,
Crazy.
lukewarm Atlanta, I don't think they're a value if you're gonna bet.
All right, let's move over to the NFC North. I will go first. I think this is a strong division. Um, I think the Lions are going to win the division. I think they're going to make a next step up and be an elite team. I also my second place team is the Packers. I think they have a chance to also take a step up. So top you're very strong in the top 2 there. The Bears got this Williams character. So I don't know, everybody loves him. He looks like he runs around a lot to me. We'll see. Um, runs around like a chicken with his head cut off in the pocket. We'll see. But they do have a lot of talent. Like they have a lot of weapons for him. So they'll probably be better this year. I don't think they have a chance to win the division, but they'll probably be improved. And the Vikings are just bad. They're just rebuilding. They're pretty bad. So Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings, and we'll go to Chalky.
So, I have Packers, Lions, Bears, Vikings. Um, Packers got on a roll after a slow start last year. They had the 49ers on the ropes, couldn't close the deal. Same thing for the Lions. Um, I just wasn't I wasn't super sold in the Lions preseason last year. They obviously proved me wrong, so maybe it's still residual on that. Um, but at almost double the price, and even if I'm not, betting, I'll put the Packers on top of the division. Um, I think the Bears are not likely to win. I think that's bad value on them to win the division, but I think they'll get some wins as we'll discuss later. And the Vikings is a rebuilding year, and then your quarterback is now done for the year that you just drafted. So good luck with Sam Darnold.
Meeker.
Yeah, I had the Lions winning the division. Strong offensive line, emerging second option, Jamison Williams for a full season, and defensively one of the better secondaries in all of football. I think they're making their way into that elite class in the NFC. The Packers, second, showing signs of making it towards the elite class of the NFC teams, but I still think they're a little young. They're a few years away. But LaFleur is one of the best coaches in the NFL for sure. The Bears. Obviously, the first year of Caleb Williams, he'll have his ups and downs, but he's entering a great situation, like you mentioned, Jason. We have a lot of offensive talent surrounding him, so it's a really good situation for a rookie quarterback. And they made some good offseason moves on defense to improve it, but they're not a playoff team quite yet. Maybe in a couple years we'll see that. And the Vikings, like you mentioned, I don't think just like Chalky said, we're not going to see JJ McCarthy, so we get Sam Darnold for another shot at starting quarterback in the NFL. But they're going to struggle to win 5 or 6 games and finish last.
One thing I should have mentioned about the Lions is their defense was not great last year, but they added DJ Reader this year, and he is a run stopper. He's gonna help them immensely. I really think that, uh, their defense will definitely be solid this year, and the offense is still very good, so I really like the Lions. Alright, so our last team in the last division in the NFC will be the West, and we will have Chalky go first.
So order would be 49ers, Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks. 49ers are still the 49ers. If everybody's healthy, no one should touch them. They'll be in the mix at the end of the season as always. Um, Seahawks new coach, we'll see how much Carroll was holding them up or holding them back. But um Cardinals, I really, they're going to be, well, they'll start healthy at least. I just think the Seahawks are going to be bad, but so I'll say the Cardinals by default are almost third, but um, it's the 49ers and then the rest of the division like it has been the last few years.
Meeker?
Yeah, the Niners winning the division. I mean, obviously, we've heard about some of these preseason questions and injuries that surround the team, the Ayuk situation, McCaffrey getting hurt. It's the first time in a while they come into a season where they have a little bit of turmoil, but they're obviously a talented roster and they can overcome all that. The one thing I'll say about the Niners, like Purdy is no longer the cute story. Now he has to be what he's expected to be as a quarterback in the NFL. So we'll see if he continues his success. Rams, second, strong wide receiver depth, standout rookies on defense deliver a highly competitive season. McVay does his best coaching job since their Super Bowl season, and Stafford stays healthy as he begins to end his career. I think they're going to have a good season in LA. I do have the Seahawks finishing third, but I'm not convinced. It's a transitional season for them. They have a new coach. But same story in Seattle. I mean, you have Geno Smith as a quarterback. You're just not talented enough to compete in a tough division with the Niners and the Rams. And then with the Cardinals, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Chalky. They could surprise some teams. They get Marvin Harrison. He might be the offensive rookie of the year. Uh, we'll see. They're going to score some points, but their defense is still not sturdy enough to compete for a playoff spot. So they'll finish last.
So my thoughts are very similar to Chalky's. I have the 49ers winning the division. They have some internal issues that are scary, especially Trent Williams holdout. I mean, they better
That's
get
true. Yeah, I didn't mention that. I mean, he's to me, other than Purdy, he's the second most important person on that offense.
I
I think they'll
totally
get it settled out, but he has set out a year before. So
I
at his
agree.
age, at his age, it's risk, but
Yeah,
Big risk.
that's a problem. But Purdy outplays his rookie contract so greatly that they have all this talent. Like they're going to be there in the end, but they need Williams. If they don't have Williams in there, all bets are off. But if they get Williams back, they got Ayuk back yesterday, so they might cave in with Williams. Um, they better cave in with Williams if they want to do anything this year, but they're going to win the division. Um, Rams could be good this year. They definitely could be good. They're losing Aaron Donald. He retired. That's big. But they're by far the second best team in the division. Um, I like Chalky. I have the Cardinals finishing third. I mean, believe it or not, the offense really, really improved when Murray was healthy last year. And I'm no
Yep.
Murray fan. I'm not a big Murray fan at all, but they did improve. I actually don't think Gannon's that bad of a coach. So I do like them this year. I have Seattle last. Their defense is gonna be good. You know, they got their coach is the Ravens defensive coordinator last year. I'm just not a Geno Smith fan. I think that's, if he's your starting quarterback, you have problems. So, Niners, Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks for me. All right, let's jump over to the AFC. We'll start with the AFC East, and we will have Meeker lead us off.
I think this is a really tough division to predict, but I'm going to go with the Dolphins winning the division this year. And the question with Miami will always be, are they tough enough? We will see that because they lost arguably their best defender, their toughest defender in the offseason in Christian Wilkins. But the offense, again, will have their fireworks, and the defense, I think, is strong enough to win in the NFC East because I think there's some questions with the other teams. Um, Jets, I have them finishing second. Rodgers gets another shot at making something happen in New York, but do we know how good he's going to look? I mean, what kind of rust is he going to have? And I think if we're talking about Sirianni and a coach that has his job on the line, I think Saleh is another coach that has his job on the line this year. The roster is strong on both sides of the ball, but these are the Jets, so they have a propensity to blow it, so we'll see what happens there. But I have them finishing second. I think the Bills are going to finish third. They always have a chance to win the division, obviously, with Josh Allen as their quarterback, but I don't like the wide receiving core. I'm not big on the running game, even though Cook had a pretty good year this last year, or the secondary. And of course, they've had some defensive injuries with Milano getting lost for at least half the season or more. But this might be a year that Buffalo misses the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, but I'm picking them to miss the playoffs. And of course, you have the Patriots finishing in last. And, quietly, they have a pretty good defense, one of the better defenses last year, especially in the second half of the season. But offensively, they're inept and weak. And, it'll be just maybe a couple weeks, 3, 4 weeks before we probably see Drake May if he doesn't start the season.
All right, I'll go next. I think the Jets are winning the division. I think that could be very good. Their roster is excellent. Their defense is very good. I still think Rodgers is very capable. He's very good. Yeah, he missed a year and he's 40 years old, but he's he he's going to be a lot better than what they had at quarterback last year. So I have them winning the division. I agree with Meeker. I think Meeker had the Dolphins winning the division. I have them second. I have them probably as a wild card team. They still have a lot of talent on that team. They have a lot of offensive talent, obviously. Not the biggest Tua fan, but they're pretty solid. They're a solid team. They could be not only a wild card team, but a wild card where they could be really good, or maybe they aren't. But you know they have some talent. So I think the Bills are taking a step back this year. I'm not a fan of McDermott. I think he's a bad coach. He's probably going to get fired this year. Um, they did lose some offensive talent, so a lot of the burden of the offense is going to be on Josh Allen. And I just think, I see them as taking a little bit of a step back this year, and I probably have them out of the playoffs as well. Although I don't remember what I wrote down. I'll take her. Yeah, I do have them out of the playoffs. So, and then last is the Patriots. They might be the worst team in the league. It's either them or the Jets, I think, or the Giants, I think. They're just atrocious. Very, very bad. Uh, I think they're rebuilding, and you could might be talking about 2 or 3 wins for them. All right, we're gonna move on to I think you guys both went, right, or did Chalky, did you go I'm sorry, Chalky.
That's all right.
Yep, yep.
I'll go quick. I have the same order as Jason. Um, and my endorsement of the Jets is more based on both the Dolphins and the Bills taking a step back and the Jets taking a huge step forward. I- you know, Look, if Rodgers plays the whole season, he's going to give him quarterback play that's good enough to probably win the division. But if you're getting 2022 Aaron Rodgers, it's not going to be good enough to have them go too far. But they have very good defense. They have some great playmakers on offense. So as long as you can get a competent, healthy quarterback, I think it'll be enough to win that division.
Okay. So let's jump to the AFC South. I'll lead off here, and I'm gonna have a surprise here. I'm gonna pick the Jacksonville Jaguars to win the division. I think they're gonna have a bounce back year. I think everybody's writing off Lawrence. I'm willing to give him one more chance. This is it, right? This is it. He's got one more year to prove it to me. Um, but um, I think the pressure's kind of off of them now this year because they're not expected to win the division. So he definitely needs to step up. He needs to be better against pressure. He's awful against pressure. He fumbles the ball like a wild animal. Um, but I haven't win the division. I have the Texans next. I still think the Texans are good, as you'll see when we get to my picks in the playoffs. But I just think they'll take a slight step back. Remember they had a last place schedule last year, right?
Yep.
They don't have a last place schedule anymore this year. Now they have a first place schedule. But I still think they're good. Very good young team. Stroud's very good quarterback. So I have them second. Colts will be third. Um, Kind of depends on Richardson. I heard he's not looking that good in the preseason, and they may be talking about Flacco, who's their backup, being their starter. But the Titans are just so bad that I think by default the Colts are going to be third. Let's go to Chalky.
Well, your order is not a surprise because that's the same order that I have the division. Um, and it's Texans obviously had success last year with rookie quarterback, rookie coach, and their offense could be even better this year because they had some injuries and now they got Diggs coming over. So don't get me wrong, they're the favorites for a valid reason. They could easily win the division, but I think, like you said, this is a make or break year for Jacksonville. Lawrence just got his contract, but he really needs to prove it. If they don't make the playoffs this year and they struggle, Peterson might be gone
Yeah, I
already.
agree.
Um, so there's going to be some pressure there, and they're going to have a third place schedule, I believe, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
they're like 10 spots easier as I look at the chart on the schedule than Texans. So um, I'm going with them for those reasons. But the Texans, there's a lot to like about them, as we'll talk about later.
All right, Meeker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys. I think the Jaguars are going to win the division. Last year was a bit of a disaster. I'm willing to give Trevor Lawrence another year, like you are. I like the roster aside from the secondary, but I feel it's a redemption year for Jacksonville. The Texans in second. I think they were the best story in the NFL last year, with a rookie coach and rookie quarterback, like you mentioned. Should have been the first round pick in the draft, Stroud. Um, but defenses have a way of figuring out a little bit. I'm not sure if they'll have as much success offensively as they had last year. And I think they'll impress, and they're a playoff team, but they're not going to be sneaking up on anybody anymore. With the Colts, I'm looking at two things. Is Richardson going to be a proficient NFL quarterback with accuracy enough to make plays with his arm and not just his legs? And is Leatu Latu going to be a difference maker on their defense? So those questions, if they were answered yes, maybe they're above 500 team. If they're answered no, then I think they could be a 6-win team in Indianapolis, and the Titans will finish last. New coach, new starting quarterback. Um, you know, not ready to make any kind of noise in the AFC.
Okay, let's move over to the AFC North, and we will have Chalky lead off.
So, I was surprised that Bengals and Ravens were co-favorites. I was big on Cincinnati last year. Burrow obviously wasn't healthy, and they have some internal turmoil with Chase and his contract coming up. But now he's really the last receiver left. So they would be very, very foolish to not make him happy, as he's. I mean, I know people will still say Jefferson, but if you had to ask me to draft a receiver, it would be very difficult for me to take Jefferson over Chase. I like Chase that much. And him and Burrow obviously work well together from college days through the NFL. So, Baltimore will be there. I don't like Cleveland. I think Stefanski's a good enough coach to make them competitive, but Watson still has a lot to prove. Um, and Pittsburgh, I think this is maybe the year Mike Tomlin finally doesn't
Yeah,
get a winning record. But look, the other thing with Cincinnati too is Cincinnati's was Cincinnati was the last place team in that division last year with a 9-8 record without one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the league for most of the season. So that schedule plus hopefully, of course, I should say this with everybody if they stay healthy, right? That has comes with it, but um, I think that'll all work in Cincinnati's advantage to win the division this year.
Yep. All right, Meeker.
Yeah, to me, it's interchangeable, just like the odds of who wins this division. I'm going to go Ravens, but I can see both these teams having the same record, and the Ravens just somehow winning for whatever tiebreaker they win by. Last year was Lamar's best chance, I think, to show that he's capable of leading a team to a Super Bowl, and obviously came within a few plays of being able to do that. But now he's got a reliable option in his backfield, in Derrick Henry, which opens up more options offensively than ever before, since he's been the quarterback. They've lost three-fifths of their offensive line, though, and I'm not sure that that's a good thing, even if you have Derrick Henry in the backfield. Defense is certainly stacked, so question is, what team's gonna ruin Lamar's chances of getting to a Super Bowl this year? We'll see. Bengals in second, healthy season of Joe Burrow. Obviously, the determining factor whether this team is good or not. It's really that simple. The defense is serviceable, or if not above average, and the offensive line has been improved. So, is it enough to go far for them? I do think so. The Browns, I think, are a good team, but I don't think they are a playoff team. No one questions their talents on defense, but I am not a big fan of Deshaun Watson, and Nick Chubb is still injured. I think that's a tough division for them to win more than, say, 9 games and make a playoff. So I'm going to count out the Browns from the playoffs, but finish third. And the Steelers, look, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And that's the bottom line. I mean, as good as their defense may be, this might be that year, like Chalky said, that Tomlin doesn't win 9 games.
All right, so I have the Bengals winning this division. They have a last place schedule. Chalky mentioned last year they weren't a bad team and they didn't have Burrow for most of the year. I think Taylor did a really good job as coach. Probably pretty good coach there. They do have you have some concerns. They have an issue with Chase, right? He's a malcontent right now. They lost DJ Reader, so while I think they were like the best run defense in the league with him on the field and like one of the worst with him off the field. So that's a pretty big drop off losing him. Um, but last year they had the toughest schedule in the league, and this year they have like the one of the top 5 or 6 easiest. So um, I think they're going to win the division. I really do, and I think they could go pretty far. I think the Ravens are regressing. They lost Patrick Queen. I mean, I'm
E-
sorry, Queen. That's gonna help hurt them big time. They have a very tough schedule. They lost their defensive coordinator. That may hurt them as well. I don't like Lamar Jackson. He might put up all kinds of, you know, stats in the regular season. Um, I guess we could talk about his playoff performance when we get to playoffs, but I think they're gonna take a slight step back. I do have them making the playoffs, but I think they're gonna take a step back. Um, Browns have a really good team. They have a really good coach. They have a really good defense, and they have a really bad quarterback. I don't like Deshaun Watson at all. I think he stinks, and I think that's what hurts them. But they're tough. They're a really good team. Um, so I don't have them making the playoffs because of Watson, but they're a pretty good team. And maybe that's a team. We talk about Dallas with Prescott. If Dallas decides to move on from Prescott, maybe Cleveland decides to move on from Watson, and maybe Dallas takes on a Watson or something, who knows, but, and then the Steelers are just to me, they're just like blah, mediocre team. Um, I don't like either of the quarterbacks. So I don't I think by default they'll finish last because 'cause a pretty tough division. I don't think they're a terrible team, but I don't see them making a lot of noise. All right, so let's go to the West, and we'll start with Meeker to end our divisions.
I think this is the easiest pick to win a division, and that would be the Chiefs. Last year was a surprising Super Bowl season, in my opinion, for KC. But what should we really be surprised when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback? And they're arguably a better roster than they were last year. and a defense that was more prevalent than the offense last year is a scary thought for the NFL. I think they easily win this division. Now, with the rest of these 3 teams, again, I think that's kind of interchangeable because I think they're all right around the same, but I'm gonna pick Denver second. So we will see if Sean Payton can work his magic with, his handpicked quarterback in Bo Nix, who kinda reminds you a little bit of Drew Brees, but that's a very tall, hill to climb. I think their defense has improved over the start of the season to the end of the season last year, so they're a little bit better, but they have a long way to go to be a playoff team. Chargers, obviously, I think they're a little bit more in transition. This is kind of a year that Harbaugh, takes a look at the roster and figures out who he likes and who he doesn't like. And you know, Justin Herbert obviously is a great quarterback, and I'm sure Harbaugh could do some good things with him. I think he'll straighten it out, but it'll take a couple years before they're back in the playoff hunt. It's a fix the problems year, I think, for Harbaugh. And then the Raiders could be a team that could surprise and finish second in this division. Pierce gets a shot at showing he's an NFL coach, and they have a pretty good defense when they added Christian Wilkins, who I aforementioned. So they could be okay or below average. One of those teams that I can go either way. I mean, like you said, what team we were talking about? The Arizona Cardinals. They could be decent, or they can completely fall off a cliff. That could be the Raiders as well. I'm picking them in last, but it's not like a strong last. They could finish second for me
All
with
right,
these teams.
I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna be quick. Chiefs. I mean, unless Mahomes gets hurt and Carson Wentz is your quarterback, the Chiefs are winning the division. I have the Chargers second. I do think Harbaugh will be a major improvement over their clown that they had as the coach last year. Um,
Worst.
yeah, he was horrible. I think he's going to improve uh, Herbert. Um, I have the Raiders third. Kind of by default. I just think the Raiders and Broncos are both so bad. Raiders third. Broncos, Meeker, are terrible. They're eating the most cap space of any team in the league. So that will hurt them. And they have a
I
rookie,
don't think
Bo
they're good.
Nix, rookie
They
quarterback.
could be last.
Yeah. So they're last. Chalky.
So I think this will be the one case where we two people don't agree on an order in the divisions, but uh Chiefs, I don't think it's as fait accompli as Meeker's saying, but I think they've improved the roster. Uh Chargers, look, Harbaugh's been out of the big league for almost a decade, but when he was in there before, he stepped into a San Francisco team that hadn't made the playoffs in almost a decade and went to 3 consecutive NFC Championship games with Alex Smith and Kaepernick as their quarterbacks and almost won a Super Bowl. So I got to think he's going to elevate that game and maybe he can get Herbert to that next level. I have Broncos third. It's not an enthusiastic third, but they have some talent, and Peyton can probably get Knicks to play. Sounds like he's playing decent so far. And then Raiders would be fourth for me. And their quarterback situation is a little bit of a mess, and their best offensive player doesn't sound like he wants to be there anymore. So I think they'll be last in the division.
All right. So we're at the hour mark. So let's move on to our playoff teams. We know everybody's division winners, and we know everybody's thoughts on teams. So we don't need a reiteration of that. Just give me your 3 wild cards for the NFC, Meeker.
My 3 wild cards for the NFC are the Cowboys, the Packers, and the Rams.
Okay. Chalky.
Cowboys, Lions, Bears.
Bear. Okay. I'm the same as Meeker. Cowboys, Rams, and Packers. Let's go to the AFC. Chalky.
Uh, Ravens, Texans, Chargers.
Meeker.
Well, I have the Jets, the Bengals, and the Texans.
And I have the Ravens, Texans, and Dolphins. All right, so let's go to our NFC Championship game. I will start. I'm going to be boring. I have the same one as last year. However, I do think the Lions will have home field advantage. I have the 49ers versus Lions. Chalky.
I also have a rematch, but it's from the divisional round, 49ers and Packers.
Meeker.
I have the Lions over the Rams.
Okay. AFC. Chalky.
Bengals, Chiefs.
Meeker,
Bengals over the Dolphins.
and I have Bengals and Texans. Um, and I guess I'll go to Chalky for his Super Bowl.
I believe the Cincinnati Bengals will defeat the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl.
Meeker.
It's an all cat Super Bowl. Lions over Bengals.
God, this is not going to happen. Meeker. I have the Lions and Bengals too. I guess it's not happening. I guess it's not happening. But listen, I got the Bengals winning just because Campbell and Goff, Taylor and Burrow. I mean, I think Taylor's a good coach, but Burrow over Goff. So I have the Bengals beating the Lions, and Meeker's got the
Let me ask you,
Lions.
I should know. Are we fading? Are we fading Casey just to fade them?
No, I just think they're getting older, right?
Mm,
And I think some of the teams in the conference are getting better.
yeah.
And I Burrow's the 2 years Burrow has been healthy, he beat Mahomes and almost beat him. So he's taken it to Mahomes as well as anybody in the playoffs so far.
Yeah.
So
I think that's what's gonna happen. I think they're gonna meet in the divisional round, and I think that's where KC loses, and that's to Cincinnati.
So
Oh,
I'll give you Tommy's pick. So Tommy's NFC Championship game is Rams and Packers, and his
okay.
AFC Championship game is Texans and Chiefs, and he has the Texans beating the Rams in the Super Bowl.
Wow. That's going
So,
on a little.
yep.
I
All
I
right.
I the
That
Texans making the Super Bowl wouldn't be I didn't pick them for the division, but upside they could get to the Super Bowl.
that was my thought. I think they'll take a small step back just because of schedule. I still think they'll make the playoffs, and I think that's where they make their noise is in the playoffs. But I don't have them going to the Super Bowl. I have them losing in the.
I think they're maybe a year away if they have a productive year this year. I could see that next year.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's go around the horn with some prop bets. Let's start with MVP. Chalky, what do you got for MVP?
Burrow, 9.5 to 1.
Just one pick.
Yeah, just one.
Meeker.
Burrow is my pick for the MVP, but if you wanna, take a flyer, Tua, 25 to 1.
Okay. So my top pick is Goff. Now I have Goff at like 40 to 1. He's no longer 40 to 1. He's 20 to 1. But I'm gonna give you a handful of guys like I always do. I can't I can't not give you Purdy, right? I mean, Purdy almost won the MVP last year. He's got all kinds of talent around him. I think he's a better quarterback than maybe other people think. So I think 18 to 1, it's probably not great odds, but he's got a shot. Burrow, of course, odds aren't great, only 9 to 1. I think Rodgers, New York, if he leads them to a division win and he plays well, it's New York propaganda. Don't count him out. I think Love has a chance at 14 to 1. And I'll give you Trevor Lawrence at 30 to 1, right? There's value there. If he if this RC had just hit another home run. Wow. Sorry.
I'm not thank God I'm not.
No, yeah, it's a big game. So Lawrence at 30 to 1.
We would have said the
Um,
same thing last night if we had recorded, but
yeah. I mean, RC's got 2 home runs though tonight.
yeah.
Off. All right. Let's go to offensive player of the year. Meeker, anybody?
I'm gonna go CD Lamb, he's 10 to 1, that's my pick, but I think it wouldn't be a bad bet to try AJ Brown at 30 to 1.
I do think it would be a bad bet. Chalky.
I'm actually on the boat that says Devontae Smith may be the better highly ranked receiver at the end of the year over Brown, even though I think Brown will still be very good. Jamar Chase, 12 to 1.
So I have 3 guys. Barkley, 22 to 1. I think there's a lot of value there. Um, St. Brown, I had him last year. That offense could be really good, 18 to 1. And then Bryce Hall at 15 to 1. I think the Jets offense could be pretty good this year. Do you guys have a defensive player of the year? Chalky.
I do. I have Jalen Carter, 50 to 1.
Okay, not bad. Meeker?
I think Miles Garrett will win that, but, my long shot is Kyle Hamilton at 35 to 1.
So I have 2. I have Hutchinson. Now he's 11 to 1 now. I did bet him earlier, and I think I got better odds on that. Hutchinson for the Lions. And then I took a shot with Sauce Gardner. Again, it's the whole Jets New York story. 60 to 1. Maybe he has 10 interceptions this year or something crazy, right? I don't
I
know.
do like Hutchinson. I just went with Carter because I thought 50 to 1 if he plays at those potential is great value, but I almost went with Hutchinson too.
Yeah. No, that's good value. You're right. Do you guys have any coaches of the year? I have a couple. If you don't,
I do not.
Meeker, do you have any?
On McVay. I didn't write the
Okay.
odds down, though.
Yeah, I don't have his odds. I'll give you 4. I'll give you Salah, right? Again, Jet story. 16 to 1 for Salah. I'll give you Morris at 13 to 1 for Atlanta. I'll give you Zach Taylor 25 to 1 because I think the Bengals have a good year. And I'll give you Dan Quinn at 20 to 1. I think Washington's defense might be really good. And if Daniels plays well and they surprise and win 9 games by chance or something, 8 or 9 games, he might have a shot. And then the last category that I looked at was offensive rookie of the year. Yep. I'll give you 2 guys, and then if you guys have anybody, go right ahead. I did Jaden Daniels at plus. I think he's 6 to 1 now. I think he's the starter for Washington, and he may put up some stats there. And then Marvin Harrison, how could you not? At I believe he's plus 650. Problem is, it most likely will go to a quarterback, but he just could be unbelievably good. Anybody? You guys have anybody offensive rookie of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Harrison. I think that's likely, but, I you could take a flyer on Brock Bowers. He's 50 to 1.
Uh, I think Harrison within 3 years will be a top 5 receiver in the league, but all my offensive rookie of the years are receivers. Harrison, Neighbors at 14 to 1, Xavier Worthy at 22 to 1.
Okay. I'm out of props. I think Meeker, you said you had some league leaders you wanted to talk about.
Well, I mean, I wrote them down because that's what we did last year. Just some flyers on some certain categories, like receiving yards. I'm on Ross St. Brown, 11 to 1, Cooper Cup, 20 to 1. Um, Passing TDs, Jared Goff, 16 to 1, and Tua, 16 to 1. Receptions, Nakua,
Let
20
me
to
ask you a
1.
question, Meeker. Do you know if they were the favorites, uh,
They're not
the quarterbacks? Who was the favorite? Do you know offhand?
for TDs,
Yeah,
Mahomes.
it was Mahomes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. For receptions, Nakua or Cooper Cup, 20 to 1 or 30 to 1 if you want to take one of those guys. And that might be a problem, obviously, because they're going to take from each other.
And I also
Um,
think they play if I believe I read they play the hardest, toughest defense versus the pass, and schedule is the hardest versus the pass in the league. So that could be an issue.
how about quarterback interceptions? Deshaun Watson, 40 to 1.
Oh yeah,
40 to 1.
I like that a lot. I might put that in after the show. I do. I like it a lot.
Justin Herbert, 60 to 1. I mean, he's going to throw a lot. That's possible. And what else do I have? Rushing yards. Kieran Williams, 12 to 1. And Josh Jacobs, 16 to 1, I think are pretty
Kieran
good bets.
Williams, I believe, is returning punts. Did I hear that correctly this year?
Really?
So I
Well,
think I think he's going to split time at back. So that might be I might have to bank that bet on you, Meeker. Book it for you. I might book it.
You want to book that one?
I might book it.
Okay. What else do I have? Sacks, Trey Hendrickson is 10 to 1. I think that's a good bet. And the passing yards. Burrow is 8.5 to 1, and Tua is 8 to 1. So those are my props for league leaders.
All right. Chalky, anything?
I have a defensive rookie of the year, and maybe it's a homer pick, but Mitchell. It took a while to get a defensive player drafted. Mitchell was the first one. He's 14 to 1. if he can play up and the defense looks a little better, there's no standouts, I think. So 14-1, take a shot.
Okay. Any other bets you guys want to talk about? No.
I put in something the other day. It was just who's going to win the division. I think I picked like the three teams that or had the longest odds of what we just went through: the Bucks, the Jaguars, and I don't know if it was maybe the Dolphins. I think, and that was like some ridiculous number.
I
It
think
was like,
you talked about a parlay last year, which is a good idea. I might do that.
yeah, you could
Division.
probably like division winners if
Yeah.
you like the Jaguars. They're not, they're not the favorite. If you like another non-favorite, just pick your three non-favorites
I
for
mean,
the
you could
ones that have the longest odds.
parlay 8, an 18 parlay, even if you got favorites in there, it's gonna pay.
Oh, you get ridiculous numbers on something like that.
Yeah. So I
Yep.
might do something like that.
Something to root for too during the year if you really don't have
Yeah.
any, you don't have a dog in the fight. Just root for those guys, those teams to win the division.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, I think that's it. Action-packed show. Hopefully gave some winners out. Hopefully Tommy will be back next week. We will get into week 1 of the NFL. We will start our handicapping contest again. Our 3-pack of picks, and we will give our thoughts on the Eagles game. So stay tuned next week for episode number 123. This has been episode number 122 of Broad Street Hustle. Thank you guys for joining, and have a great night.